Welcome to Mastermind Minutes, the podcast that focuses on the franchise industry. We'll cover topics that are important to franchisees as well as franchisors and share interesting insights that will help you build your business. We have one guest, we ask one question, and we do this in minutes, not hours. Good morning and welcome to another edition of Mastermind Minutes. My name's Gary Occhiogrosso. I am the founder of Franchise Growth Solutions and also sort of the developer here at Mastermind Minutes. And the concept is pretty simple. For those of you who've heard the program before, you know we typically will have one guest and have one topic or one question, and we'll get an expert answer, and we do it in minutes, not hours, hence the name Mastermind Minutes. Today, my guest is Randy Wyner, and he is the founder of Chronic Tacos, a subject I absolutely love, tacos, which is a Southern Californian fast casual Mexican chain of restaurants. He's born and raised in Orange County, so he draws his inspiration from the distinct Californian food culture. He grew up on authentic Mexican food and signature SoCal taquerias. It was his belief that the tastiest taquerias tended to be small, family-owned shops that led him to open the first taco shop using third-generation family recipes he acquired from a close family friend. And I will agree with that. Having driven down the Pacific Coast Highway, every small little taqueria that I ever saw, I stopped in, and it was always absolutely the best. This is when he was struck with the idea, by the way, of made-to-order Mexican food, and that was not only fast but fresh and flavorful and good. And that's how Chronic Tacos was born. That's when it was born, and we're going to find out about it today from Randy. So, Randy, first of all, thank you very much for being with us today. I truly appreciate it. I know you got up early. You're in California. I'm in New York. So before we get into the question, maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about Randy's background and Chronic Tacos. You know, what was the inspiration and that sort of stuff, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Sure. Well, first, Gary, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. Fan, I like it. This is going to be fun. So inspiration, what inspired me? Well, I was living in Newport Beach, California. I was in my mid-20s, and there was no good Mexican food in Newport. It was, and I grew up in Santa Ana, where we had taquerias on every corner, and I was very used to authentic taquerias. No one spoke English. I could barely order. And when in Newport Beach, there was nothing around. And there was this little tiny spot, 850 square feet. Wasn't even zoned for a restaurant. And I called the landlord, never had any restaurant experience, and asked the landlord if they would give me a couple weeks to figure out what I could do with this location. I remember I gave him $2,000 and said, keep this $2,000 non-refundable. Just give me 2 weeks to figure out what's going to go in this spot. And the 2 weeks came up, and I was sitting there with the co-founder, Dan Biello, and I said, what am I going to do with this little spot? And he said, Mexican food. There's no Mexican food. And we had a company called Chronic Industries that was doing apparel, and we said, let's call it Chronic Tacos. There was a need for it. We had no idea what we were doing. I called our childhood friend, Jason Bonilla, his whole family was in the Mexican food industry, and they were meat suppliers, and they made their own tortillas. And I called him up and said, Jason, I need help. I need some recipes. And sure enough, he joined us, and we got grandma's recipes. And it's funny because it took us 14 months to open our first taco shop. Now we do it in 90 days. But we didn't know what we were doing. We hired our buddies to do the plans, do the plumbing, and everything had to be done twice, and we learned so many lessons. But it was a lesson learned on our first shop, and we opened up, and people were like, who are these gringos making tacos? And it was funny because we opened up, and it was just doing okay, nothing crazy. but our food was really good. We had, fresh food. I wanted it to be how you make it. And this is before Chipotle came in. And, I wanted it to be authentic, and I wanted you to be able to pick what you want in it. So, we set it up where, you decide. You want cheese, you get cheese. You want onions, you get onions. You want guacamole, you get guacamole. You want hot sauce, you get hot sauce. So,
Yep. Yep.
we made it how you like it. And it's crazy. So 6 months go by, we're working it. I'm working the nights, I'm working my day job, and then I'm there at night, and I worked on Sundays, and my partner was there every day. And we all of a sudden it got a write up in a local paper, and we just in the local newspaper. This is when people used to read newspapers. They a line out the door. It was crazy how it affected our business. And then we had other write-ups, and people were talking. People were driving 45 minutes in SoCal. There's taco shops in every corner. They were driving 45 minutes to an hour to come eat our tacos. And, people are like, chronic tacos, at that time, this is, 23 years ago, people were like, what is this place? And when they would come in and they would try our food, and it was just, we have great food, and our tacos and our mahi mahi and our fish tacos and our breakfast burritos. And it just went crazy. And that's kind of how it started. We needed good tacos in Newport, and we just jumped in and said, let's do this, and put it together. And now we have over 30 restaurants and
I was gonna,
franchises.
yeah, I was gonna ask. It sounds like you started what in 2020 in 2002, 2003.
Yeah, 2002, first taco shop.
And how many units do you have right now?
We're about 32, and another 4 in development right now.
And they're all franchised other than your original shops? How many you have?
We have 8 corporate stores. That was a big thing for us, to make sure that we maintained a good size of corporate stores to know
Sure.
what we're doing. Before I started franchising, I wanted to prove the concept, and we, the first year or two, we had one store, and then 2 years, our second store we opened 2 years later, and I was getting calls, like, I want to open a taco shop. And I didn't understand the franchise world then. And I was thinking, okay, well, we'll just partner with all these people. And then I was like, we should look into franchising. And that's kind of when we started meeting with other franchise companies and franchise attorneys, and getting the whole grasp of what it is to franchise. And I knew that I needed a few, at least 3 under my belt to, I hear about these franchise companies that have one store and then they want to franchise, and you've got to have a proven concept. So, our second store we opened in the city right next to us, Huntington Beach, and we opened up, line out the door, and people already, we had the name, it's the next city over. So I think it was a really good strategy for us to go into the next market, that people were already coming from Huntington Beach to Newport. So we started with that one. Then we opened a third one in Corona Del Mar, which is another, right next to Newport, and prove that people are going to come in, and our food and our our operations was there. And it was hard in the first taco shop. We had to learn. We didn't have mentors.
When did you
And
start?
so,
Excuse me, what year did you start franchising?
2006.
Okay. Okay. So the growth has been steady, but certainly not rapid compared to a lot of other brands. But it sounds like it's been a steady, responsible growth, which is super, super important. So that kind of takes me to the question. And as you're growing now, how share with the audience how does the company, how do you and your partners kind of brainstorm about keeping true to the authenticity of the product, not compromising the integrity of the product? Because again, I mean, I've opened up thousands of restaurants or thousands of franchises, and I can tell you that as franchise companies grow, certainly ours, when they start to get into 50 or 100 units or expand into other markets, their biggest challenge is supply chain. And then their second biggest challenge is monitoring franchisees that actually maintain brand standards. So how are you managing, product in other markets as you grow and franchisees maintaining brand standards? Because
Yeah.
that is always a question for emerging brands.
It's funny when we first started franchising. We were, if you came in and wanted a franchise and you were funded, we are like, you're in. And we learned our lesson. We learned that you need awesome operators.
Yep.
You need experienced operators. Even if they don't have a restaurant, I'll teach you how to roll a burrito, but you got to know how to run a business, and you need to know how to watch your margins. And so, what we learned in the beginning was you can't just franchise to anybody. You got to have the right people, and the interview process is very, you've got to be on it. You've got to decide and make those decisions as a franchisor. And in the beginning, you want to sign deals and you want cash flow. And what we learned was you got to pick the right operators. First, it's the operator. Distribution, yeah, you got all the big guys out there. It takes time to set up the distribution side of it for expansion. Whether it's the big guys, Cisco, U.S. Foods, whatever they are. You've got to have what your ingredients are and you stick to it. What I see with these chains that get up, 50, whatever, they just start looking, yes, it's important, the bottom line, but you have to keep the integrity of the food. And once you start buying the cheaper products, it changes everything. And you see it all the time when these big companies come and buy you out and they're just looking at margins, bottom lines. That's all they care about and not the food itself, I feel. So keeping the integrity of the food was so important with our expansion, finding the right operators. How we do it, we call them FSMs, franchise support managers, and I'm one of them. I mean, as the founder, I talk to my franchisees daily. We always wanted to be at a spot where they can pick up the phone and call me. I'm going to stores. I'm doing store tours. I go and do inspections and myself. My strong part is being in the stores. I love the culture of the restaurants, but for expansion, it was making sure we have really good operators. And then, of course, distribution and having everything dialed in to our specs and not mediating from keeping those specs up. And it might be a little bit more expensive. You got to adjust your costs. You got to, it is what it is. You got to keep the standards up. And then we spent so many years developing the systems to follow and make it dummy proof where it's easy to follow and not a super complicated. Our menu's big. We have breakfast, lunch, we have fish, shrimp. So, and everything's made, from scratch, the guacamole, the salsas, the salsa verde, the hot sauce. So there's a lot to it, but once you have the steps in place and everything penciled out, it's just training and putting it into the franchisees that they are going to be the trainers that train their staff. And, it takes a certain personality for a restaurant operator, someone who's happy, energetic. They're the coach. They inspire their team. But it starts with the operator, and then the distribution side. It just took a while to find the right distributor who carries the specs, specking everything out in detail, and then just creating our manuals and really being involved with the franchisees. I mean, daily. We're partners, and that's how we treat it. Like, we're married.
Yeah, I can agree with you more, and I will tell you that we coach most of our brands in our portfolio have less than 50 or 75 units, but some of them have 300 units. So when we coach emerging brands, say like Chronic Tacos, what we reinforce with founders is, it really is what I call the three-legged stool. And
Hmm.
one leg is the concept, one leg is the location, and the other leg is the operator. And you need all three in order for it to work. Although I will often say, I would rather have an A plus operator in a B plus location than a B plus operator in an A plus location, because
I
that
love
kind of
that.
gives the edge to the operator. I mean, we do business with franchisees that own 90 of one brand and 150 of another brand, what they call the mumbos, the
Uh-huh.
multi-unit, multi-brand operators. So we see how they operate with sort of that as a bit of a backdrop. And I was on the website and I saw that, and maybe I'm dialing too much into this next part, but you tell me. But I noticed that you've got some vegetarian things, you've got alternative proteins. What was the driver behind that? Because
Mhm.
obviously that's not typical, Mexican cuisine.
Yeah, no, I always feel in this business you have to evolve, and vegetarians, it's so important. Like that's a way of life right now. That's a lifestyle.
Yep.
And we call ourselves a lifestyle brand, and it's so important to evolve to what's selling, what's on the market, what are people looking for. I want someone to come in, and if there's a group of people and there's some vegetarians, I want them to feel that we've created something for them, that they can get an impossible meat, a salad. I have all the ingredients, so vegetarians are great. It's lettuce. It's whatever. They don't eat meat. They might eat fish. I got fish, and then we stepped up with like impossible meats, and and what happens is they feel like we're there for them to support them as well. And I think it's important as a brand to evolve to what's going on in the world and what people are gearing towards. I mean, there's a lot of vegetarians and vegans out there, and
Yep.
I want them to enjoy and be able to go to a taco shop with their family and friends and get what they need and what they want and what they choose their lifestyle to be like. So, it's and we're always evolving the menu. We're always looking at what's trending in the market. What are people gearing towards? And hey, we've struck out. We've tried things. It doesn't work. We remove it. And that's what I like about our chain. We could have a franchisee that has an idea. We'll run it in some stores and see how it flows. And if it goes well and it's selling, we put it on the menu. We listen to customers, what they want. So it's really like with our franchisees, we have a franchise advisory council that I have franchisees on the board, and we go like, hey, what's working, what's not? What are you hearing about inside the taco shops? What are people asking for? What do they want? And if there's something we don't have, let's look at it, see what it costs, and how we can make it work. And but evolving is so important. I see chains that just get stale. They got the same food. Food changes.
Yep.
Even these mom and pop shops, even as a chain, I always say like we're a chain, but we're locally owned. Everybody lives in wherever there's a taco shop. That person operating that store lives there and understands the community and what they're looking for and what they want as a product. And,
Yep.
and we're here to deliver it.
Well, it all makes sense. I mean, the three things I'm hearing there is evolution of the brand, collaboration with franchisees, and then the third piece that we preach and teach is overcoming what I call the veto vote. So
Mhm.
if somebody, in your example, is vegetarian, they go, "Oh, I don't want to go to Chronic Tacos," 4 or 5 people maybe out together, then it's almost like they killed the deal for everybody because that
Yeah.
one person can't get something they want. So I hear you.
Yeah.
Kind of as a last thought. No, actually, before that, one other thing kind of pops in my head, and that's what do you see as risks and contingencies for your company as you grow it? Is it supply chain? Is it real estate, labor, brand awareness? Like, are there any things, what keeps you up at night as you grow the brand?
I for us, we've realized, we had spurts. We grow fast. I think growing to what you can handle is important. You can't grow too fast in this business. Like you were said earlier, you touched on like locations. Locations are so key. I always tell our franchise, our prospects, or someone that's looking to franchise a business or a taco shop, you know, location is so important. Take your time. don't rush anything. We don't force it and say, oh, you have to open by this amount of time. No, we all as a team, the franchisee and us as a franchisor, make sure the locations are the right locations and we really do our homework. Supply chain, always important. What keeps me up at night is I want good operators. I want to find franchise operators that are in it. When somebody calls me and says I want to open a taco shop because I'm retiring, it makes me laugh. There's in this business you've got to be hands on um and I tell on my franchise calls and my sales calls, this is a hands-on business. You've got to be in it. This isn't just turn the lights on and leave and let the employees run it. You've got to be there to be the coach. And for me, I think it's just finding the right operators. Um, Supply chain, I think we've got it so dialed already, and we've been through, the bad parts of that. But for me, it's just making sure that I educate my franchisees, whether they're in the restaurant business or in another business, what this is all about and what it takes to be a good operator
Yep.
in the restaurant business. And
Yep.
that's my, when I have a sales call, I always say, I'm here to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. And this is going to be a journey and it's going to be work, but it's so fun and you can make money. And if you've got that personality, but it's finding those people, I think is sometimes a challenge, and then educating them on what this business takes to make it profitable
Yeah.
and run a good business.
I hear you, and I agree. All right, kind of last thought on legacy. What would you, if you could define the legacy you want for Chronic Tacos to leave behind, sort of in the industry and in the world? What are you looking ultimately to leave behind, so to speak, using Chronic Tacos as sort of the vehicle for that?
When I first started this, I I always dreamed Chronic Tacos would be a household name. And in the beginning, people laughed at me. People were like, "What's this chronic? This is crazy." And now I hear it every day when I meet people. Oh my gosh, I grew up on chronic tacos. It's such a big part of my life. And that's the legacy that I want to leave, is that I want people to talk about chronic tacos and say, you know what? This guy from Newport Beach, not educated, opened up a taco shop, took a chance, and now is nationwide in other countries, and it's become a household name. And I want to keep that going. And I want to bring good food and good California inspired Mexican food all over the US and anywhere that people will, are looking for that. So the legacy is again, Chronic Tacos is a household name, and that's what I want to keep building. I want my kids to grow up at school and hear about, oh my gosh, I love chronic tacos, and just keep this going. It's been such a rad journey. I have no regrets. I've just been blessed with this.
Great, and that's a great last thought on legacy. I love that because what it tells me and what I'm sure it tells the audience is that you're not driven by the P&L. Yeah, the P&L is important, but you're driven by, what's the mark you're going to make on the planet. Well, we've been speaking with Randy Wyner, who's the founder of Chronic Tacos. Randy, thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to seeing you here on the East Coast at some point in the future, not just you, but the brand. And again, if folks want to reach out to you and learn more about Chronic Tacos, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, of course, our website, chronictacos.com, has all of our information on there. You can always email me at randy@chronictacos.com. But yeah, come on, check out our website and you'll see everything on there.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much for getting up early and spending the time with us today.
Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate your time, and this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.